Ready to go. The Planning Commission meeting for Tuesday, September 8th is called to order. Stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Printout of the agenda.
I don't, but,
Would you think?
Absolutely. Ready? Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
do you have it printed out that you don't?
Well, sir, do we have any public comment on things that are not on the agenda?
Well, we need to take roll call first. David Brents. Here. Scott Gold. Aaron Peterson. Justin Rodriguez.
Present.
Jack Williams.
Here. Now we'll go to public comment. And I don't see anybody online. Doesn't look like we have anybody on Zoom. Anybody on the phones?
Nope.
Okay, moving on. Any requests for continuance, withdrawals, or, okay. Ex parte communications, any discussions or comments? Okay, let's move to the approval of the minutes for the August 3rd meeting. And maybe we can do the August 17th meeting at the same time.
Well, we should do separate motions for
Separate,
both.
okay.
Yeah.
For August 3rd, any changes or updates? Justin?
No.
No, okay, well, I move that we approve for August 3rd.
Okay.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye?
Aye.
Okay. Approval of the minutes for August 17th. Any questions or concerns about those? Anybody want to make a motion to approve it, or
I'll make a motion to approve the,
I'll second the motion to approve the minutes.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye?
aye.
3-0. Okay, moving on to public hearing items. Item 2A. Lori.
Great. Good evening. The item before you is from Renee Karsoff in regards to the development plan for a 300-square-foot standalone building to be used for a retail ice cream shop in the TRZ zone at 1660 Copenhagen Drive. This project was deemed to be categorically exempt under 15303E of the CEQA guidelines, which refers to small buildings within the correct zone district. This particular project was some concern to staff over a period of time because there had been some additional changes done to the building located at 1660 Copenhagen Drive, including the addition of the hot dog stand. And the interpretation of the zoning ordinance was what they historically referred to as adding 300 square feet every couple of years onto a property. Most of the reference was that they were attached buildings. This is a standalone building. So previous staff were struggling with how to permit the project, but during that period of time of trying to find a determination of what to do, they allowed the applicant to go through the building permit process. So there was somewhat of a dual process going on. The project, we finally determined that it didn't meet the ordinance. So the city council and the planning commission adopted a interpretation that you'd have to do a development plan or refer to the additional 300 square feet that would come to the planning commission. So just to make sure that we covered all the bases, we're here tonight as an individual development plan for this 300 square foot standalone building that meets all of the other requirements of the TRZ zone. It did go through Board of Architecture review. It's very similar to the existing building. And it fills in somewhat of a missing tooth between the buildings that are currently there. Historically, it was the driveway for the bank. So we're here tonight with a recommendation for approval of this development plan for this small building. And the applicant is here tonight, and if you have any questions for the staff, we're here also.
Okay, does the applicant want to make a statement at all, or? Well, we have nobody who wants to speak, apparently. Nobody here, nobody on Zoom, nobody online, so we'll bring it back to the commission. Anybody have any comments, questions, concerns?
I don't see a problem with it. It's a kind of a weird open dead space right there, because it's right in front of the sausage garden, right? And it's kind of like this bizarre looking, it's still striped like a parking lot, if I'm not mistaken, the asphalt that's there. So I think making a functional use, try and bring in more tax dollars for the city because COVID has hit us hard. I don't see a problem. What are they planning to put in there, or what kind of retail?
Currently, the permit that's sitting at the counter is for ice cream shop. Counter, open windows, open doors.
That sounds like a good idea to me. I know I have 2 little girls that would like that.
Sounds like a sweet idea to me as well. I see no objection.
I don't really object, but I do have a couple of questions. The drawings that we have are for the original building, and the change that was in the write-up said that the kitchen was going to be removed. That's not shown on here. And I assume that that's still going to happen, but part of the restaurant that was going to go in there was the exhaust stack for the stoves. Is that stack going to be removed? So from an exterior viewpoint, it's going to look exactly like the drawings. It's just the interior that's going to change?
The interiors are going to be as per the drawings.
Well, the drawings show kitchens and stoves, but I had the understanding that it wasn't going to be a restaurant, it was just going to be an ice cream shop.
It was originally permitted as a restaurant. The original permit was for a restaurant,
That's correct.
yeah, and that's what I thought we was continuing.
But it was brought back to us as an ice cream shop. And are you planning to make ice cream on site?
Probably.
Okay, because when you do that, there's health department.
And it went through
things
the
that
health
come-
department as well, yeah.
So anyway, I'm just concerned that he's building a restaurant, but he's calling it an ice cream shop.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I would just note, this project has an odd history with people who no longer work here, who were trying to come up with a way to justify their reading of the zoning ordinance in a way that absolutely didn't read that way. And so they were telling the applicant to do things like call it an ice cream shop, do other things. None of those really are of any import to what you have before you this evening. We've actually fixed the ordinance so that no one will try to interpret it in that way. Again, now it's very simple. When somebody wants to build something, they come and they get a development plan approved. And so that's what the request is for. The request is for a development plan for retail/restaurant space. And your approval today, if you grant it, would be for a new 300 square foot building for retail/restaurant space. And then I would expect that the applicant would go back to the original approved plans, which I think, as I recall, actually got building, they were essentially ready for issuance for a building
Yes,
permit
yeah,
with,
I remember.
yeah, with all the things inside. This goes to, as you recall, a couple of months ago, we brought to you the ordinance that the council had approved on an urgency basis, which will now be going back to the council, which not only allows for additional outdoor space for restaurants, wine tasting, and beer, I think, but also the clarifications, so that the two code sections that address this issue of what can be approved with, as a minor addition, is in fact an addition.
Okay,
So-
so maybe I misread the,
I believe so. I believe this is back to the original proposed project, which is a commercial retail space which can be used for a restaurant.
I completely missed that in my, but that's what it says in the
Yes.
motion that we're gonna,
Yes.
That's actually what's in the resolution that you would be adopting.
Jack, I just had a quick question. What was your, I don't want to say objection, but if it's an ice cream shop, it's still a food service? And then if the ice cream shop folds up and it's permitted for a restaurant, was built out as a restaurant, then it would allow a new tenant to come in and it would be a seamless transition. So I was just
right,
wondering
but
what your,
for an ice cream
question.
shop that serves ice cream out of a container like Rite Aid does, has different health department requirements than one who actually makes the ice cream. If you're making the ice cream, you've got the same requirements as though you had a food service. So I just was curious what we were actually going to do.
The way the review of the project as well as the resolution refers to it as a retail restaurant use.
Okay,
The last description that we got was from the applicant was that it was going to be an ice cream shop, but it was permitted, or it can be permitted for retail restaurant.
so you're going to do both, basically.
It'll be better than Rite Aid.
Well, they got pretty
Whatever
good
we
ice
do.
cream, I have to admit. Okay, so that's all I had. If somebody want to make a motion?
so we make a motion right now to approve continuance, or what
The
is it?
resolution?
Resolution to,
And I think we have to approve the,
You would approve the project,
The-
including conditions of approval, and adopt the resolution.
And the resolution is 20-4.
all right, so is that all right? Are you guys in agreement?
Yeah.
I'll make a motion to adopt resolution 20-4 per city planning recommendations for the address at 1660 Copenhagen Drive. Did I get that right?
yes?
Anything else I need to add in there?
Do we need to approve the CEQA exemption as well? Or do that separately, or is this?
Right.
You can add that, You can add that in your motion, that this was categorically exempt.
Okay, and it's exempt from CEQA.
Yeah, it's actually one of the
Conditions.
determinations in the resolution.
So if it's in there, then we don't need to pull that out.
The resolution.
Yeah.
Okay. Second?
I second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Approved 3-0.
Right.
We look forward to your new business.
Okay. Next item on the agenda is for the Santa Barbara Certified Farmers Market, represented by Sam Edelman. This is a 5-year renewal of the existing conditional use permit. The permit has the farmers market operating on Wednesday afternoons from 1:45 to 7:30, in the summer months, 11:45 to 7 in the winter months. Currently, the permit is for First Street, but now that Copenhagen Drive has been closed since July, the farmers market has moved over to Copenhagen, so that there's a dual use on Wednesdays for that area. Over the last couple of weeks, we've been working with Sam in the market to survey both the customers and the vendors. There's a number of responses in your packet. There was sort of a swing vote between customers. A majority of them liked the new location, whereas the vendors preferred the old location. But it was kind of a split vote on both sides. So we're recommending to the Planning Commission that we continue to operate at Copenhagen for the time being, that Copenhagen it looks like the way the permit's written is that it'll be Copenhagen as the primary location. At such time that the city council opens Copenhagen again or changes or determines that the farmer's market should be somewhere else, it's up to the discretion of the planning director to make the determination of moving that during the next 5 years. So we've left a little bit of flexibility in the conditions of approval so that they don't have to come back to the planning commission in the interim if they need to move somewhere else, either in a parking lot or back on First Street. So at this point, we're here tonight recommending approval of the location of the farmer's market on Copenhagen Street for the next 5 years.
Okay, anybody want to, would you like to address this?
Should I come up or from here? What-
No, you can come up.
All right, sounds good. Hi, I'm Sam Edelman. I'm the general manager of the Santa Barbara Certified Farmers Market Association. I've been running the association since 2005. So I think we've been located on First Street for a little over 15 years and had a wonderful farmers market in the city of Solvang for well over 20. I know, just speaking from our vendor side of things, the staging is very challenging. I'm a little concerned that over time it might become unsustainable to have to continually offload all that product, particularly when we get into the winter season, when it gets rainy. If we are going to go to Copenhagen, I would like kind of a high level of flexibility to be able to work with city staff or the director. I like that recommendation, to be able to make changes as needed as the circumstances change. I've been dealing with this in Santa Barbara. Obviously, you're probably aware of State Street. We've had major build-outs, and we've had to adapt a lot, and we really do want this to be a mutually beneficial situation for the city, the businesses, the customers. We do feel that First Street is a better location for our farmers, and also for the community under normal circumstances. Obviously, we have different circumstances now, but just when the park was being used and just that symbiotic relationship with the community and the market, and not having the farmers have to unload. But either way, we're willing to work with the city moving forward. But I would really stress having some sort of level of flexibility, especially as we do get into the winter season, just to kind of see what happens with the outdoor state build-outs, maybe possibly having us move back onto First Street where we can have our vehicles connected to our tents and their cars and have the product protected during that time of year, and possibly then move back as the season adapts as needed. But all in all, just it's a privilege to have a market here, and we definitely want to work with the city.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, I would note for you conditions of approval. Condition number 2, which says the market may operate in the public right-of-way of Copenhagen Drive between Alisal Road and 2nd Street, or at such other location and time as may be approved by the city manager based upon changed conditions in the city. So that provision was included in there. Currently, the planning director and the city manager are the same person, but if that changes in the future, again, it would be the city manager who can provide that flexibility, which then crosses over to the city manager also oversees public works and all the other departments.
So that addresses the issue that he brought up about where,
Yes.
although it's open-ended, it could be anywhere in the city that it moves to. It's not guaranteed that it would move back to First Street if that happens. But it doesn't address his concern about bad weather and whether they can have more flexibility in loading and unloading.
In fact, it does. It gives flexibility for him to work with the city manager on all aspects of location and timing.
Okay,
I have a question, if I may.
sure.
Why are they not able to park behind their tents as they normally would on First Street on Copenhagen? Why is there a further distance to offload, or where are they parking right now as the I haven't really noticed it.
From my, the answer I was given is because of fire lanes. They need an appropriate fire lane. So if we have trucks on both sides of the street and then we push the tents in front of the street, it really narrows out that strip too much, was my.
And it's
my-
wider on First Street, Lori? First Street's a little bit wider?
Yes. So the fire department has looked at this situation, and not only for the closure of Copenhagen, but also for the farmers market. And they want to make sure that there's a 16-foot wide unobstructed pathway along Copenhagen, which basically measures out to where the paint striping is on the diagonal. It's about 17 feet between each side of the road. And so that area needs to stay clear for any emergency that may happen along Copenhagen, so the fire department, emergency services can get there.
Sam, why aren't they parking next to their tents instead of behind them? Or is that possible to do also?
So that actually might be a
They're
possibility.
spaced out right now.
Yeah, so that's, I was actually about to mention that. So as we get into wintertime, we have fewer farmers that participate. Obviously, we're in peak season now. Everything, we're kind of crossing from summer to fall. So those summer stone fruit growers that come out of the valley, they will be exiting, and some of our even local producers that grow things like outdoor field flowers and crops that are very seasonal will be exiting. So there is a possibility that with the space along Copenhagen, we would be able to have our vehicles and then adjacent to the tents, which we would love to do if that is possible. So that might be a good compromise going into the wintertime, if that would work for the city.
Was that thought about on the in the report, or?
At this point, we're working with Sam and the city staff to come up with the solutions to make Copenhagen work. And if this is one of the options, we can set that up with Public Works, because the Public Works staff is the ones that are directing traffic and unloading and keeping everything moving smoothly.
Okay.
And so these options are all up for consideration.
And another question I had was, you got the survey notes that are included in the back here, and it seems mostly positive. I know my wife liked it when she walked down there. It seems like it's a nicer boulevard, and it almost seems like there's more tents out there now than there were on First Street, because it seems like there's a longer stretch to fit more vendors in. Is that?
Yeah, we have additional well, I think at this time of year, we're about the same as it was. It's more expansive, so we're more spread out. I think when we were on First Street, we have distancing requirements now. We
Right.
really try and keep all the tents more spread out than they used to be. So historically in the summertime, every one of those tents were at max capacity, and every tent is touching each other. Now there's a nice distance between the tents, and then we have the restaurant build out. So I think it appears a lot longer than it does. The same thing with I just came from our State Street market today. We're now on 3 blocks instead of 2 blocks because of working around the build outs and just going all the way up the street. It just requires us to utilize more space generally.
Okay, and the last question I had was this survey from everybody? Was it the vendors themselves and customers and local, I guess, consumers of the farmers market, or was it just mostly the farmers market vendors filling out this survey?
It was really easy for us to get the farmers because we have that relationship and we connect with farmers. We did some surveying of customers as well on site.
If you look on page 3 of the staff report, there's actually a tally of the number of surveys that were received, both from the customers and, which I think was about 27, and then from the vendors, I think it was 19 or 20. And again, in both of those,
23.
it was a split kind of weighing in each direction.
Yeah.
But the comments were very good. People really put some time into responding to the questions, and there was passion on both sides.
I don't know, I think it makes sense because Copenhagen is the main drag. I mean, it's on State Street in Santa Barbara.
Yeah.
And we only do it once a week here, so I don't see it being a problem.
Yeah. I think it's just when it gets down to the unloading and unloading was the biggest concern that the farmers have. Just being able to kind of sustain that throughout the various seasons. Although we made it through the hottest times of the year so far, but I think the rain in the winter, if there's ways to either keep those vehicles on site on Copenhagen during that time of year, it'd be very beneficial.
One last question I had was there ever any consideration keeping it on First Street but moving it 1 block down so it's not near the park but down kind of out of the way more, so that, I know there's Fitzpatrick's Tavern right there and then the Moleholes right there, so there's parking for those stores that could be accessible during farmers market hours that, you're not impeding other businesses, or it's not blocking the way for other people to get to those, or the book loft, or if they're going to park around the corner.
The situation with Copenhagen's closing is that you're keeping First Street open to take that traffic around Copenhagen. So if you close First Street for the farmer's market, you now have closed sort of the grid.
Right, but I'm talking about for future reference, like not just now, but for, when COVID goes away or if Copenhagen reopens.
And I think that's, any of those options about where the strategic location would be for the farmer's market, if it was going to switch, at least for the next 5 years, the staff has the flexibility to work with the farmer's market to come up with the best location. For the time being, we're going to do everything we can to make it work on Copenhagen Street.
Okay.
Or Drive.
I would just note the old permit had some very specific detail. For example, there was a 12-foot lane requirement, so I think it's interesting the fire department seems to be coming up with something that's different than what the old permit actually required, but it was very specific about where it was in front of particular shops. And then there was a attached traffic control plan, which went for the whole 5-year period. We've instead, in the new conditions, there are a few of them where we've instead tried to create flexibility and not have those very specific to First Street and to particular
Right.
shop owners and, some of them who've complained or didn't like, this particular thing. The new conditions are more, I'll call them more generic, but also intended to create more flexibility so that the city manager can approve changes as we may need as we go forward.
I was just thinking also because that hotel just went in there too, Winston, and those people are going to need to come in and out. So if they use on Wednesdays, if they want guests that want to drive in and out, that's going to block them if the farmer's market stays there on First Street. So I don't know, that's something to consider also.
I think one of the comments that we saw throughout the survey was, it took me a while to get used to it. The change was, it's only been 2 months, and the responses from the vendors are, the customers are getting used to it, and it's okay if we stay, type of consensus from the survey responses. So I think just working with logistics on setup is probably the biggest challenge for the vendors. The customers seem to like it.
With respect to the survey, did you share the customer views of doing it on Copenhagen with your vendors?
I haven't shared the details of it yet, but I have an open, not the specifics of every individual survey, but we have open dialogues about, they knew this hearing was coming up, and I speak with my farmers on a almost daily basis at various markets. And they get a lot of feedback from our customers as well. A lot of the customers, also repeatedly say, whatever you like, we like. But I think they've adapted as far as the location. It's not that far away from where it was before. So that aspect of it is, I think the primary challenge for our farmers is not the customers coming through, it's the staging. I think that's the biggest hurdle we've had to overcome. But we've had to overcome a lot of hurdles, as everyone has, over the last 6 months. It's been just a whirlwind we've made a lot of adaptions at all of our markets everywhere.
The reason I ask is when I looked at the numbers, in round numbers, 60% of the vendors wanted to go back to First Street, and 60% of the customers wanted to stay in Copenhagen. So, there's a little disconnect there, but
Yeah, and for the vendors, what it really comes down to is, they're running businesses, so obviously sales will drive a lot of that feeling for them on a personal level, just how that affects their day to day. But there's so many, especially running an outdoor farmers market, there are so many external factors on just a day to day basis. It's really hard to gauge on such a short window or short period of time. So I think having that level of flexibility with the city staff moving forward would be really helpful, and then. Hopefully, I think my biggest concern is just looking forward to the near future is the winter and just sort of where we'll go.
Yeah.
But like I said, we'll have much fewer farmers there, so if we can attach some vehicles and make that work, I think it'd be very beneficial.
okay, as long as the flexibility is there that
There's a lot
Sitting
of
at-
flexibility here, and I'm happy to work with the
Yeah.
farmers
Yeah, I know.
market. I feel very flexible, but yeah, and I think it's been a lot busier during the summer. But if there's going to be a little bit less, maybe restaurant space and other spaces during the winter, I think there's definitely space and potential.
Okay, any other questions? Again, no Zoom, no. So I don't see any reason why we shouldn't approve this resolution. You- Somebody want to make a motion to do so?
And to approve the resolution as written.
I'll second the motion to approve the resolution for the farmer's market
Motion
as
made-
directed by the planning
motion made
department.
and seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye,
Aye.
3-0.
All right, well, thank you very much, and look forward to working with you down the road.
Yeah.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Yeah, the farmer's market is very popular in town.
Thank you. Thank you. We're glad to do it.
Okay, so,
We have a couple of discussion items,
yes, closure of Copenhagen Drive.
and Sina will take this one on.
Yeah, so this is just a really update
There's no
informational
staff
item
report on this.
for the Planning Commission. Just to let you know what has transpired on Copenhagen Drive, just to remind you, originally when COVID-19 happened, the city council closed Copenhagen Street to allow businesses to expand and to allow for additional social distancing on that street. It got fairly positive feedback as we went along. And originally it was planned to all the addresses within 300 feet of Copenhagen Street. And so far as you can see, we have not had any public comment, at least today. But this will be coming to the City Council on September 14th to consider permanent closure of Copenhagen Street. And of course, with that, we will be talking, we've done some preliminary work with departments. There will be considerations on the public works and some more permanent, structures that would need to happen there for that kind of closure. There's also the fire department that we will be working for. So there will be some review through the planning process for this closure. And then this would come back to the Planning Commission for your recommendations for City Council. So that's the update. And then, of course, the next item will be the Branding and Design Committee, who would also have a part in this Copenhagen closure in terms of the actual design of the street and those recommendations.
Comments? A couple on the closure. I've gotten some feedback from the public that a couple of concerns. One, that there is not sufficient enforcement of the masking and social distancing, that people read the signs and walk by them, and that's the last they think about it. And I don't know if that's just the people or if the vendors, the retailers who are supposed to be enforcing it are not. But perhaps something could be done about that.
Right. So one of the things we have right now, we have had a change in code enforcement officer again. I hope that this will be a more permanent working relationship with our current person. And then we are also working with the County of Santa Barbara, who are actually advising and trying to create a comprehensive program throughout the county, including all the city jurisdictions, to have ambassadors, as they call them. So the county
haven't said.
provides training and works with those people, so we can actually reach out and create some sort of a potential volunteer group of people that could help us with that education and continuous reminder and enforcement of the social distancing.
Yeah, that's one thing that I thought that Santa Barbara did really well from day one, that somebody thought of that. So I thought that was a good thing. Another thing that was brought up was at the closure points, that maybe we could put a fencing or something along there, because a couple of people expressed concern that if there's lots of kids out there, that, young kids tend to, well, first of all, they can get under the rope that's there, and maybe run out on Alisol, and just something to look at so that we might prevent a future problem.
Right. So some of the preliminary recommendations the Public Works Department is looking at is exactly that, and we also work with the Sheriff's Department and Traffic and Safety And some of the other considerations that we will bring as options for consideration would be potentially maybe allowing for more access into that parking lot too as well. Because as we consider more permanent closure and being able to actually create safe structures, that might be one of the possibilities.
Okay. Could you go over one more time what the process will be on making a decision on rather two things, to temporarily keep Copenhagen closed, and what do we mean by temporarily? Or if the decision is to close it permanently, what is the process through city regulations and what have you that could implement either one of those?
So step one,
Be addressing Chip.
I think all of us could fit in. I think step one is on September 14th, the city council has already made a motion for staff to come back with a resolution to consider closing the Copenhagen Street permanently. If they do consider that resolution and they pass that resolution, then there would need to be certain planning type of steps that we would need to make happen for permanent closure, which is, some of the public works, fire considerations, that could then come back to planning commission for recommendations, which would eventually be approved as a project along with design and branding committee by city council.
Yeah, I would note the council actually had at least two discussions, and the issue was whether or not the city was going to begin coming up with longer-term improvements on Copenhagen. There was not a lot of point in spending the money for that if, in fact, again, it was going to be as originally, envisioned, a 2-month thing, or if it was going to be a short-term thing, then a lot of the improvements would be short-term type improvements. And one of the big issues, for example, the city has been renting a lot of the tables and chairs out there. Some of the, what were called parklets, have been a bit inconsistent. And so again, the council made the decision that it wanted to move forward with a more permanent closure so that those investments made sense and could be made. To the extent that they are actual physical activity, physical changes that require some sort of planning approval, and I'm trying to think of things that would require planning approval. I can't think of a lot of them. There may be other changes, though. For example, as you know, there are alleys on either side of Copenhagen. Those alleys might have some change to them. If the alleys had some change to them, that's probably something that would come back to the Planning Commission for your recommendation. Or again, for example, if there were major physical construction changes, if the way that the entry occurs to is that parking lot number 2, I think?
Yes.
To parking lot number 2, then you would be seeing those plans for physical change. But the council's resolution to close the road is something that's only in the purview of the council, and it's an action that the council would be taking.
And they can do that
They-
unilaterally.
They in fact are elected to make decisions like that.
So I
If they
think,
were to, excuse me, if they were to, but not they, but if the city closes it permanently and decides to put in some sort of permanent structures along there, then that would come to the planning commission.
Any sort of major physical change like that, again, and I'm imagining if there were some sort of steel fencing at the ends of the road rather than what's there now with some minor change to it, that would come back to you. You probably were involved in this. The pylons that are there now actually went through, there was a whole street improvement process that included the design of those pylons. They were both designed from an aesthetic standpoint and also from a safety standpoint. You know, they're permanently attached in the ground so that if a car hits them, it meets some sort of safety standard. Changes to things like that would come back to you.
So if I may add, I think the motion was made to close the street permanently, but there wasn't at that point much policy discussion. So I think the September 14th would give clearer picture of what type of changes we're really looking for and for what duration of time.
So
And-
that'll be the public's opportunity to
Right.
come and talk with
Absolutely.
the city council.
And again, this is another round of noticing that we did within 300 feet of Copenhagen in all directions, so that so everybody's aware that this hearing is going to be on the 14th.
Good. Okay, so you've got our comments, which is what you were looking for. On the branding and design committee, what is the status of that? I know it was established and people were appointed to it. Has there been any thought given to how you can educate those people on what the existing rules and regulations are, which, if I remember correctly, it was said when it was established that the current regulations that the bar was going by would remain in effect. But
Right, so I can give you a quick update on where we are with the branding and design committee right now. At the last council meeting, the council had appointed 5 members of the new branding and design committee. They are Brett Marchi, Esther Bates, Jennifer Dryden-Hess, Helena Viluda Kazmierzak, and Renee Karskov, who is actually here with us tonight. Their first meeting is going to be held on this Thursday at 6 p.m. Right now, we are following sort of the same procedural processes as the BAR used to be. And much of that agenda is actually going to be just, taking oath and being onboarded. It's a procedural item.
kind of organization,
Organization of the meeting, organization of the chair, so establishing a meeting of future meetings, as well as having some preliminary discussion on an advanced calendar. So in that advanced calendar discussion, the branding and design committee will have an opportunity to both consider the fact that yes, they're taking over the prior BAR duties. There's this existing conditions. They could also be updated on the, the process that we're going with the general plan update, including the design update. And then, of course, there's the sign ordinance that the BDC could amend, change, as well as the processes of what is being approved at the BDC level versus the staff level, as some of the discussions before were about the overly burdensome process with the BAR. So all of that will be in their hands, and at some point we'll also need to come back to council with final recommendations for an ordinance amendment, fully creating in a formal way the BDC committee, which will then also clarify in a final form what exactly their duties and responsibilities will be.
but in the meantime, before they can consider changes or updates, they need to be aware of what it currently is. So have they been given copies of the general plan and the sign ordinance and all the color charts and what have you?
I have those requests. They will be before they meet on this Thursday. So yes,
Yeah, because I would think that they're probably asking for that,
they are, yes.
I would hope.
So over the last 6 months, the projects that have gone through the planning department have been approved at the staff level. I review them, Zena reviews the recommendations, and what we need to educate the public on is we now are reestablishing the branding and design committee in place of the BAR. So some projects will take an added amount of time to get through the process that we're setting up. And that's historically what was happening, signs, color changes, building designs, were all going through a Board of Architecture review. That step was supplanted for a while. We're getting back into that routine.
Right. I would also actually mention, I would look at city attorney on this too, but the language in the resolution establishing the BDC has some flexibility that there's certain things that the BDC does have to approve, and then there's certain things where there's flexibility to where the city manager can defer matters to the planning commission or to the BDC. But it's not necessarily black and white. Every single sign has to go to the BDC. So that's the discussions between BDC and staff that need to be established.
Yeah, I would just confirm one of the actions the council took earlier this year. There are signs and color changes on existing buildings are things that the city manager has the authority to approve, but may request input from the BDC. So I would assume those things would continue. Again, relatively minor color changes, things like that, that at one time would take several months because of a several-month BAR process, won't go back to that several months BAR process.
Okay. Let's hope not, but, all the feedback I got from developers and architects was that the BAR wasn't the choke point in the city. It was the plan check that was the choke point. And that's being changed, has already been changed.
It has been changed.
That's been changed, and I think from our review, we found that there were multiple choke points. So hopefully we are fixing as many of those choke points as we can.
You have any other comments? Okay, so you've got my comments anyway.
Thank you.
Thank you. That's, I think, the last thing on the agenda. Nope. Nobody had any comments?
Just a
Staff
follow-up
comments?
from planning staff. We did review the Ed George project, and we did respond in a letter. I have copies for you and our response. Technically, the project as a pre-application submittal was deemed complete, and there was a series of instructions on what needs to happen next. So it's a terminology, a term of language that planners use. Deemed complete means something. In this process, with the pre-application process, there was only so many items that we had to check based on state law to make that determination. So want to make sure that it's clear that it's important distinction, but he still has a long way to go in this process.
Okay, and is there any way, and I brought this up when he was here, is there any way that we can guide him a little bit on those buildings so that they look more part of Solvang?
Mr. Chair.
They're going in?
I actually didn't know that we were going to be having this discussion. I want us to be very careful because one of the problems with SB 330 is that we can only have 5 total meetings about the project, and so I don't want this to be one of them. So I would urge that you simply have received a report from staff and we not have
You're moving forward.
anything that anybody is going to claim in a future claim against the city was a meeting.
That's a good point. So
I'm
Based
going to
on-
give you
on
the
that-
copies of the letters.
based on that comment, when do you anticipate the next meeting, official meeting of those, was it 5 meetings we can have take place?
The way the state law is written, the ball's in his court now. He has 180 days to respond.
Oh, okay. So
With a
anytime
full-
between
with a full
September 4th and
application.
180 days,
Yeah.
and then,
With a full application that includes architecture, planning, design, site plan, grading, drainage, soils reports, anything that we would require of any other applicant.
okay. Good. So are you going to send those in
I'm just gonna hand
email
them to you.
attachments, or are you going to give us hard
I can do that
copies?
also. I have copies here.
Oh, good. I'd rather have the hard copy.
And that's it for us.
Okay, so no more comments? Okay, I think we're adjourned. Thank you, everybody. Thank you. Renee?